she saved a dying stranger in the rain. 15 years later, he returned as a multimillionaire, holding a shoebox full of letters he wrote to her, but never sent. On a stormy April evening in 2008, Grace Williams was just trying to get home after a long shift at the hospital. She'd been a nurse for 28 years, and all she wanted was to get out of her scrubs and rest her aching feet. But when her headlights caught something lying beside the road in the pouring rain, everything changed. Grace pulled over and found a teenage boy, unconscious, burning with fever, moments from death. She didn't know his name. She didn't know where he came from. But the decision she made that night would change both their lives in ways she could never imagine. Before we begin, I'm curious. Where are you watching from? Drop your state in the comments. The boy's name was Jamal Mitchell, and 3 years earlier, his life had been completely different. He'd grown up on the south side of Chicago with his mother, Lorraine. She worked 3 jobs, cleaning offices at night, the breakfast shift at a downtown diner, and doing hair for neighborhood ladies on weekends. Money was always tight, but they had each other. Lorraine had dreams for her son. She wanted him to go to college, to have opportunities she never had. She saved every extra dollar in a jar hidden in her closet. Jamal was a good student, quiet and thoughtful, always at the library. His teachers said he had potential. His mama said he had greatness in him. On Sunday mornings, they'd walk hand in hand to the little Baptist church 3 blocks away. Those were the days when Jamal felt safe, when the world made sense. But everything shattered on a Tuesday evening in November, 2 weeks before Jamal's 13th birthday. Lorraine was walking home from her night shift, cutting through an alley she'd walked 1,000 times. She never made it home. She was caught in the crossfire of a gang shooting, an innocent woman in the wrong place at the wrong time. Jamal was pulled out of class by a social worker. The moment he saw her face, he knew. When she told him his mama was gone, something inside him broke that would take years to heal. At the funeral, he sat in the front row of that same little church, staring at his mama's casket, wearing the Easter suit she'd bought him. The pastor talked about God's plan and heaven's gates, but Jamal couldn't hear any of it. His mama was gone. The only person who'd ever loved him was gone forever. Jamal had no father. His dad had left before he was born. His mama's family was scattered, nobody able to take in a grieving 13-year-old boy. The state placed Jamal in foster care, and that's when his real struggle began. Over the next 2.5 years, Jamal lived in 7 different foster homes. Some families were indifferent, treating him like a piece of furniture. Others made it clear he was just a burden they tolerated for the monthly check. At one house, he wasn't allowed to eat dinner with the family. At another, the foster father had an unpredictable temper, and Jamal learned to stay quiet and invisible. He stopped trusting adults. School became impossible to focus on. How could he care about homework when he didn't know where he'd be sleeping next week? His grades dropped. Teachers who once praised him now looked at him with pity. He started skipping classes, wandering the streets, trying to outrun the pain that followed him everywhere. By the time Jamal turned 15, the bright-eyed boy who used to read library books was gone, replaced by someone just going through the motions. Nobody really saw him. He was just another case number, another kid the system had failed. Then came late March of 2008. Jamal had been removed from his 8th foster home after defending himself against the family's son, who'd been bullying him. His caseworker said they'd find a new placement, but it would take a few days. In the meantime, Jamal had nowhere to go. He spent 2 nights sleeping in a park. On the 3rd night, the temperature dropped, and the rain started, a violent spring storm that soaked him within minutes. Jamal had been ignoring a persistent cough and fever for over a week. Now, walking in the freezing rain with nowhere to go, His body started shutting down. He walked for hours, shivering, disoriented, his vision blurring with each step. He ended up on a rural road on the outskirts of town. He didn't even know how he got there. His chest burned with every breath. The fever was raging. He sat down beside a drainage ditch, watching the dirty rainwater rush past. He thought about his mama, wondered if she could see him now. He thought about how tired he was, how much it hurt to keep fighting. Jamal lay down on the wet pavement. The rain hammered his face, but he barely felt it. Everything was going numb. His eyes started to close. He thought of his mama's face one last time, heard her voice singing those old gospel songs. In that moment, Jamal accepted that this was the end. But Grace Williams was about to prove him wrong. Grace was driving home from County General Hospital, exhausted after a 12-hour shift. She was 52 years old, with silver streaks in her hair and hands that had comforted thousands of patients through their worst moments. The rain was coming down so hard that her windshield wipers could barely keep up. She was driving slowly when her headlights swept across something on the side of the road. At first, she thought it was trash. Then it moved. Grace slammed on her brakes, pulled over, and ran out into the rain. She dropped to her knees beside a teenage boy lying face down in a puddle. "Oh, Lord," Grace whispered, turning him over. He was burning with fever, his lips blue, his breathing shallow. "Baby, can you hear me?" Grace said, cradling his head. "Stay with me, sweetheart." Jamal's eyes fluttered open for just a moment. He saw a woman's face, kind eyes looking down at him, and for a second, he thought maybe it was his mama. Then everything went black. Grace got him into her car and rushed to the emergency room. The doctor said if she'd found him 15 minutes later, he wouldn't have made it. Severe pneumonia, dehydration, hypothermia. Grace sat in the waiting room, soaking wet, praying. When the doctor told her Jamal had no family and would be sent back into foster care, Grace made a decision. "I'll take him," she said. The social worker was skeptical. "Ma'am, do you understand what you're taking on? This boy has been through 7 placements. He has behavioral issues, trust issues. He has nobody," Grace interrupted. "And I have a spare bedroom. I'll take him." 2 weeks later, Grace brought Jamal home. She'd prepared the guest room, bought him new clothes, stocked the fridge. Jamal stood in the doorway, overwhelmed. "This is for me?" he asked quietly. "All for you," Grace said. "This is your home now, Jamal, for as long as you need it." For the first time in years, Jamal felt something he'd almost forgotten: hope. But Grace had no idea that her decision would tear her family apart. But Grace's decision didn't sit well with everyone. Her 2 adult children, Marcus and Nicole, were concerned. Both were in their 30s with families of their own, and they thought their mother was being reckless. "Mama, you don't know this kid," Marcus said over the phone. "You're 52 years old, living alone. What if something happens?" "He's a child who needed help," Grace said firmly. "I know exactly what I'm doing." But late that night, after Jamal had gone to bed, Grace sat alone in her kitchen with a cup of tea, staring at the phone. Marcus's words echoed in her head. "What if I'm making a mistake?" she thought. "What if I can't reach him? What if he's too damaged, too hurt to ever trust again?" She looked at the closed door of the guest room down the hall. She'd spent 28 years as a nurse, helping people heal. But this was different. This wasn't a broken bone or a fever. This was a broken soul. Did I do the right thing? Grace wondered, her hands wrapped around the warm mug. Am I enough? But then she thought about that boy lying in the rain, dying alone. She thought about how scared he must have been, how abandoned he must have felt. And she knew, even if she failed, even if it was hard, she had to try. "Lord," she whispered, "give me the strength to be what this child needs." Marcus drove over the next day to talk to her in person. Jamal was upstairs when he heard voices rising in the kitchen. "You're putting yourself at risk," Marcus said. "What about your own family?" "Jamal is part of this family now," Grace replied. "And I'd appreciate it if you'd give him a chance." But Marcus and Nicole couldn't let it go. They started calling less, visiting even less. Over the next few months, the tension created a distance between Grace and her children that hadn't been there before. Jamal noticed everything. He heard the strained phone calls, felt the awkwardness during the few times Marcus or Nicole stopped by. Late at night, guilt pressed down on his chest. He was coming between Grace and her family, but Grace never wavered. She helped him with homework, took him to doctor's appointments, showed up to parent-teacher conferences. She loved him the way his mama had, unconditionally. Then came a Sunday afternoon, about 6 months after Jamal moved in. Grace and Jamal were at the grocery store when they ran into Mrs. Patterson from down the street, standing with 2 other neighborhood women. "Grace Williams," Mrs. Patterson said, loud enough for half the aisle to hear. "I've been meaning to talk to you. People are concerned about you taking in that boy. We've heard things. Troubled past, behavioral problems. Some folks say you're putting yourself in danger." Grace felt Jamal stiffen beside her. She saw the shame wash over his face, saw him start to shrink back, and something fierce rose up in Grace. "Let me tell you something," Grace said, her voice calm but steel strong. "This young man standing beside me has been through more pain in his 15 years than most people experience in a lifetime. He lost his mother. He was failed by a system that was supposed to protect him. And yes, he's had some hard times. But he is not dangerous. He is not a problem. He is a child who deserves love and a chance." She stepped closer to Mrs. Patterson. "And if you or anyone else has a problem with that, you can take it up with me. But you will not speak about him like that in front of me or behind my back. This is my son now, and I will defend him with everything I have. Are we clear?" Mrs. Patterson's mouth opened and closed. The other women looked away. "Good day, ladies," Grace said, taking Jamal's hand and walking away. In the car, Jamal was quiet, staring out the window. Grace reached over and squeezed his hand. "You don't have to defend me," he said quietly. "Yes, I do," Grace said, "because you're worth defending. And I need you to know that, Jamal. You are worth it." Jamal's eyes filled with tears, but he blinked them back and squeezed her hand in return. Still, the guilt grew heavier. Then one night, about 8 months after moving in, Jamal overheard something that changed everything. Marcus and Nicole had let themselves in while Grace was sleeping. Jamal heard them talking in the kitchen. "We need to document everything," Marcus was saying. "Keep track of any problems. Eventually, she'll see this isn't working." Jamal's heart sank. They were building a case against him, trying to get him removed. He couldn't let Grace lose her children because of him, not after everything she'd done. That night, Jamal packed his belongings and left a note on his bed. "Dear Grace, thank you for everything. But I can't let you lose your family because of me. You saved my life, and I'll never forget you. You defended me when nobody else would. You made me feel like I mattered. Please don't look for me. Love, Jamal." He slipped out at 2 a.m. and disappeared into the night. What happened next would haunt Grace for years and set Jamal on a path nobody could have predicted. When Grace found him gone the next morning, she was devastated. She called Marcus and Nicole immediately. "He's gone," she said, her voice breaking. "He heard you two plotting against him, and he left to protect me from losing you. If something happens to that boy, I will never forgive either of you." She told them to leave and didn't speak to them for months. Jamal was back on the streets, and it was worse than before, because now he knew what he was missing. He slept in shelters when he could, under bridges when he couldn't. 2 weeks after leaving, he was robbed and beaten. They took everything. His backpack, the jacket Grace had bought him, even his shoes. For the second time in his life, Jamal wondered if it would be easier to give up. But something refused to die. Maybe it was his mama's voice. Maybe it was Grace's love. Maybe it was the memory of her standing up for him in that grocery store, telling the world he was worth defending. Jamal pulled himself up and kept moving forward. 4 days later, hungry and desperate, he walked into a small electronics repair shop. An older man with gray hair was working at a bench full of circuit boards and tools. "We're closed," the man said without looking up. "I'm not here to buy anything, sir," Jamal said. "I was wondering if you needed help. I'll work for food. I learn fast." The man, Mr. Peterson, looked up and saw a skinny teenager with a fading black eye and bruises on his face. Most people would have sent him away. But Mr. Peterson had been that kid once, decades ago. "You know anything about electronics?" "No, sir. But I want to learn." Mr. Peterson studied him for a long moment. "All right. I'll give you a shot. But no stealing. Deal?" "Deal." That first day, Jamal worked harder than he'd ever worked. During lunch, Mr. Peterson asked, "You got somewhere to stay?" Jamal shook his head. "There's a storage room in back with a cot. You can sleep there temporarily, but you have to keep working and stay out of trouble." "Yes, sir." "Thank you." Over the next 6 months, Mr. Peterson taught Jamal everything about repairing electronics, how circuits worked, how to diagnose problems, how to solder, how to read schematics. Jamal absorbed it all like a sponge. "You've got a real aptitude for this," Mr. Peterson said one evening. "Don't waste it." "I won't, sir." Jamal started spending his evenings at the public library, using their computers. He discovered programming tutorials online and taught himself HTML and CSS, then JavaScript, then Python. He stayed until closing time every night, practicing, building small projects, learning. But every night, in that storage room behind the repair shop, Jamal did something else. He wrote letters. "Dear Grace, it's been 3 months since I left. I think about you every day. I wonder if you're okay, if you hate me for leaving. I want you to know I'm safe. I'm working hard. I'm trying to make something of myself. Mr. Peterson, the man who took me in, reminds me of you. He saw something in me worth saving, just like you did. I miss you. Love, Jamal." He folded the letter and put it in a shoebox under his cot with all the others. He never sent them. He couldn't face her, not yet. Not until he'd proven that her faith in him wasn't misplaced. But what Jamal was building in secret would soon shock everyone who knew his story. By the time he turned 17, Jamal had a shoebox full of unsent letters and enough savings to rent a tiny room in a boarding house. He kept working for Mr. Bob Boisseau Peterson during the day and coded late into the night. He finished his high school diploma a year early through online courses. "Dear Grace, I graduated from high school today. I know it's 2 years late, but I did it. I wish you could have been there. I wish I could have made you proud in person. I'm learning to code now. I think I might be good at it. I hope you're well. I hope Marcus and Nicole realized how wrong they were. I hope you're happy. Love, Jamal." Another letter in the box. Another night of wondering if he'd ever have the courage to send them. When Jamal turned 19, he had an idea. Mr. Peterson's shop used a complicated paper system to track inventory and repairs. What if there were software to make it easier? Jamal spent 3 months building it. A simple inventory and work order management system designed specifically for small repair shops. He called it Shop Track. "This is really something," Mr. Peterson said when Jamal showed it to him. "Other shops would pay for this." "You think so?" "I know so." Jamal polished the software and listed it online for $9.99 per month. The first week, 2 shops signed up. By the end of the first month, he had 15 customers. Within a year, ShopTrack had spread to over 200 small businesses across 3 states. Dear Grace, my software company is growing. I have over 500 customers now. Investors are calling. Can you believe it? The kid you found dying in the rain is building something real. Sometimes I wonder if you think about me. Sometimes I wonder if I hurt you too badly by leaving. I promise. One day I'll come back. One day I'll show you that saving me wasn't a mistake. Love, Jamal. Jamal reinvested every dollar back into improving the software, adding features, and expanding to other types of small businesses. He was 22 when a local business reporter wrote an article about him. Former foster kid builds software empire from scratch. The article caught the attention of investors. Within 2 years, Jamal's company had raised $3 million in funding and expanded nationwide. By 27, his company was valued at $45 million. By 32, after a major acquisition by a Fortune 500 company, Jamal's net worth exceeded $200 million. The media wanted interviews. He was invited to speak at conferences. But Jamal stayed focused and humble. He remembered sleeping under bridges. He remembered Mr. Peterson giving him a chance. He remembered Grace defending him in that grocery store, her fierce love protecting him from shame. The shoebox of letters had traveled with him through every move, every milestone. There were over 100 letters now, spanning 15 years. Dear Grace, I'm a wealthy man now. The world calls me successful, but I don't feel successful. Because the one person whose approval I want most doesn't even know where I am. I'm coming home soon. I'm finally ready to face you. I hope you can forgive me. Love, Jamal. At 35 years old, Jamal packed that shoebox of letters, got in his car, and drove home. But when he arrived, what he found would break his heart all over again. Grace Williams was 65 now, and life had been harder than she liked to admit. Her heart condition had worsened, requiring medications she could barely afford on her pension. Her house was falling apart. The roof leaked. The furnace was on its last legs. The porch steps were rotting. She couldn't afford repairs. Marcus and Nicole had eventually apologized, admitting they'd been wrong about Jamal. They visited regularly now and helped with bills when they could. But Grace could never shake the guilt. If she'd just stood up to them more strongly, maybe Jamal wouldn't have left. She'd failed him when he needed her most. She thought about him every day, prayed for him every night. Sometimes neighbors would ask, "Whatever happened to that boy you took in?" Grace would just smile and say she hoped he was doing well. Late at night, she'd lie awake and wonder, did I do enough? Did he know how much I loved him? Is he safe? Is he happy? It was a Saturday morning in October when Grace sat on her porch, wrapped in a sweater, drinking coffee. The street was quiet. Then a sleek black car turned onto her block and pulled up in front of her house. Grace's first thought was that someone important must live nearby. Then the driver's door opened, and a tall man in a perfectly tailored suit stepped out. He looked up at her, and their eyes met. Grace's coffee cup slipped from her hands and shattered on the porch. "Jamal?" she whispered. He walked up the cracked driveway, carrying a worn shoebox, his eyes never leaving hers. By now, a few neighbors had noticed and were watching curiously. Jamal climbed the rotting porch steps and stopped in front of her. "Hi, Grace," he said softly. Grace couldn't speak. She just pulled him into her arms and held on tight. Tears streaming down her face. Jamal wrapped his arms around this woman who'd saved his life 13 years ago. "I'm so sorry I left," he said, his voice breaking. "Hush now," Grace said, pulling back to look at him. "You're here. That's what matters." They sat down on the porch together. More neighbors were coming out now, curious about the expensive car and the well-dressed stranger. I should have come back sooner, Jamal said. I was ashamed. I thought I'd let you down. You could never let me down, Grace said, wiping her eyes. I just wanted to know you were safe. I'm more than safe, Jamal said. Grace, I need to tell you what happened after I left. He told her everything, about Mr. Peterson, about learning to code, about building his company. Grace listened, her hand covering her mouth in amazement. You did all that, she said. Because of you, Jamal said. You showed me that someone believed I was worth saving. That gave me the strength to keep going when things got hard. Then he handed her the shoebox. I want you to have this. Grace opened it and found stacks of letters, all addressed to her, none of them sent. I wrote to you, Jamal said. Every major moment, every milestone, every time I missed you. I wrote it all down. I just didn't have the courage to send them until I could face you in person. Grace pulled out a letter with trembling hands and began to read. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she saw his journey laid out, his struggles, his victories, his constant thoughts of her. Oh, Jamal, she whispered, you carried me with you all this time. Every single day, he said. You never left my heart. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. Grace, I'm here because I want to help you the way you helped me. Jamal, you don't owe me anything. Please, let me do this. He handed her the envelope. First, I've paid off your house. The mortgage, the property taxes, everything. It's yours, free and clear. Grace opened her mouth to protest, but Jamal continued. Second, I've set up a fund to cover all your medical expenses. Every doctor visit, every medication, everything. Jamal. And third, he said, this is for you, to live comfortably, to not worry anymore. Grace opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a check for $500,000. I can't accept this, she said, but her voice was shaking. You can and you will, Jamal said gently. You gave me a home when I had nothing. You gave me hope. You stood up for me when the whole world wanted to write me off. This doesn't even come close to repaying that. But it's a start. Grace pulled him close again, sobbing. Across the street, Mrs. Patterson, the same woman from the grocery store years ago, stood crying, her hand over her mouth. A car pulled up. Marcus and Nicole, who'd heard from a neighbor that something was happening at their mother's house. They got out and froze when they saw Jamal. Jamal stood up. There was a long, awkward moment. Then Marcus walked forward, his eyes red. Jamal, I owe you an apology. We were wrong. We were so wrong about you. We let fear guide us, Nicole added, stepping beside her brother. We tried to push you away and nearly destroyed our relationship with Mom. We're sorry. Jamal looked at them, then extended his hand. I forgive you. I understand why you were worried. You were trying to protect your mother. Marcus shook his hand, then pulled him into a hug. Thank you for coming back to her. Nicole hugged him next. We're so proud of you. But Jamal wasn't finished. What he revealed next left everyone speechless. That evening, after the neighbors had gone home and Marcus and Nicole had left, Jamal sat with Grace in her living room. There's one more thing, Jamal said. I'm starting a foundation to help kids in foster care, kids like I was, and I'd like to name it after you, the Grace Williams Foundation. Grace's eyes filled with tears. Jamal, I don't need my name on anything. But I need it there, he said, so that every kid we help knows that one person caring can change everything. What would this foundation do? Mentorship programs, scholarships, emergency housing, helping kids transition out of foster care, giving them the support system they never had. He paused. I'm putting in $2 million to start, and we'll grow it from there. Grace squeezed his hand. Your mama would be so proud of you. Jamal's eyes filled with tears. I hope so. I wish she could have seen this. She knows, baby. Trust me. She's smiling down on you right now. Over the next few days, Jamal stayed in town. He met with contractors about Grace's renovations. He visited local schools and spoke to students about perseverance. He reconnected with Mr. Peterson, who cried when he saw what Jamal had become. Before leaving, Jamal drove to the cemetery where his mama was buried. He stood at Lorraine Mitchell's grave. "Hi, Mama," he said quietly. "I know it's been a long time. I made it. I didn't give up. I kept fighting, the way you taught me." The wind rustled through the trees. "I found someone else who loved me the way you did. Her name's Grace, and she saved my life, Mama. And now I'm going to help other kids. Show them that one person believing in you can change everything." He knelt and placed flowers on her grave. "I love you, Mama, and I promise I'm going to make you proud every single day." Grace lived another 7 years, healthy and surrounded by love. She watched Jamal's foundation grow, helping hundreds of foster children find stability and hope. She attended the opening of 3 youth centers bearing her name. She met countless kids who called her Grandma Grace. She was at Jamal's wedding to Angela, a social worker he'd met through the foundation. She cried tears of joy when they asked her to stand with them. And when their first baby was born, a beautiful little girl they named Lorraine Grace Mitchell, Grace held her and wept at the honor. Marcus and Nicole fully embraced Jamal as their brother. Their children grew up calling him Uncle Jamal. When Grace passed away peacefully at 72, over 800 people attended her funeral. Jamal stood at the pulpit to deliver her eulogy, that old shoebox of letters in his hands. "Grace Williams was a nurse for 28 years, he said, his voice steady but thick with emotion. She helped thousands of patients. But her greatest act of healing happened on a rainy night when she chose to stop for a dying boy on the side of the road." He paused, looking out at the crowded church. "Grace taught me that love is a choice you make every day. Even when it's hard, even when it costs you something. She chose to love me when I had nothing to offer in return. She chose to fight for me when I'd given up on myself. She stood up for me when the world wanted to count me out." His voice broke. "I carried these letters with me for 15 years. Letters I wrote to her, but never sent because I was afraid. Afraid I wasn't worthy of her love, afraid I'd let her down. But Grace never needed those letters. She knew. She always knew that I carried her love with me." Tears streamed down his face. "Grace's legacy isn't just the foundation that bears her name or the thousands of kids we've helped. Her legacy is the truth. She lived every single day. That one act of compassion can change the trajectory of a life. That stopping for someone in their darkest moment can set off a chain reaction of love that touches thousands." He held up the box of letters. "Every letter in here represents a moment when I felt her love sustaining me. Every word is a testament to the power of one person refusing to look away from suffering." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Grace, I know you're with my mama now. I know you're both looking down, smiling. And I promise you, every child we help, every life we change, every young person who discovers their worth, that's your love multiplying. That's your legacy living on." The church was silent except for the sound of tears. "She asked me once, late at night when she thought I was asleep, if she'd done the right thing," Jamal continued. "I heard her praying, asking God if she was enough. And I want to say this now, in front of everyone. Grace, you were more than enough. You were everything. You saved me, and through you, we're saving thousands more." Today, the Grace Williams Foundation has helped over 3,000 young people find homes, finish their education, and build successful lives. Jamal personally meets with kids in the program, sharing his story, showing them that transformation is possible. But the most powerful part of Grace's legacy isn't in the numbers, it's in the ripples. There's a young woman named Tasha who came through the foundation at 16, broken and hopeless. Today she's a doctor, running a free clinic in her old neighborhood. She says Grace's story gave her hope. There's a young man named Marcus, named after Grace's son, who aged out of foster care and found the foundation. Today he's a teacher, mentoring at-risk youth. He says Grace's love, passed through Jamal, taught him what real family means. There are hundreds of these stories, thousands of ripples spreading out from that one rainy night. Every story traces back to a woman who stopped her car, a woman who chose to see a dying boy not as a statistic, not as someone else's problem, but as a human being worth saving. A woman who loved even when it cost her something. A woman who doubted herself but kept going anyway. A woman who defended fiercely, loved unconditionally, and believed stubbornly in the power of second chances. Grace Williams wasn't wealthy or powerful. She was a working nurse with her own problems, her own doubts, her own struggles. But she had something more valuable than money, a heart that refused to look away from suffering, the courage to act, and love that saw potential nobody else could see. The Grace Williams Foundation isn't just about helping foster kids. It's about proving that every single person has the power to change the world, one life at a time. It's about showing that you don't need to be perfect to make a difference. You just need to care enough to stop. Grace stopped. And because she stopped, Jamal lived. And because Jamal lived, thousands more are finding hope. That's the power of love. That's the legacy of Grace Williams. And that's the challenge before each of us. Will we stop? Will we see? Will we love? If this story touched your heart, I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, has someone ever believed in you when no one else did? Or have you been the person who stopped to help someone in need? Your story matters, and sharing it might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you know someone who needs to see this, someone who's struggling, someone who's lost hope, someone who just needs to be reminded that one person can make all the difference, share this video with them. You might just be the Grace Williams in their life. Hit that like button if this moved you, and subscribe so you never miss stories that remind us of the best of humanity. Because somewhere out there, right now, another Jamal is waiting for their grace. And maybe, just maybe, that grace is you. Thank you for watching. And remember, love is never wasted. Every act of kindness matters. Every life has value. You have the power to change someone's world.